Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
You unlock this sports talk show with the key of knowledge. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of sight.
To the day he died, Bob Greenberg said, "No, never happened, never." I said, "Bob,
You didn't
look,
see it.
It did happen. It did happen. How many people could say they jammed a frozen microphone up the rectal canal of basketball's all-time league?" He goes, "You know what? You're right. Maybe I should just run with that."
A dimension of sound.
So I go up to Ozzy. I could speak a little bit of Spanish with him. I said, "Ozzy, en el radio en el ciudad de Chicago." And he grabs the microphone. He goes, "Ah, sí, señor. Muchas gracias. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you." And that was live on WLS.
A dimension of mind.
Everybody remembers he went out to the mound and he does this, I'm pointing to my left hand, like calling him for a left-handed reliever. There was nobody warming up in the bullpen at all.
Was he stupid?
No, just dumb.
That's the minor league of stupid is dumb.
There is a difference between the two. Stupid means you have ability, you just don't use it properly. Dumb means you're just a complete idiot.
Okay, so stupid, dumb, idiot. There's the trifecta.
You're entering a land of both debate and accord. A battle of wits. You've just crossed over into the Grobstein and Schuster zone.
And welcome into another edition of Grobstein Schuster Zone. I'm David Schuster, and he is the venerable Les Grobstein. And Les, how are you doing?
Doing great. I mean, we're moving into another week. Last weekend we had another crosstown classic between the White Sox and the Cubs. The White Sox outplayed them, and boy, those first two games, especially the first game where John Lester just got absolutely torched. Sox earned winning that series 2 of 3.
I should say that we have a very special guest coming up in just a little bit. The one, the only Mike North, who we both well know.
And he's a big Sox fan.
He's a lot of fans of a lot of things, I should say. But we will talk to Mike coming up in just a little bit. Mike, of course, does a podcast right here on the Bears Barroom Network. North to North is his moniker on Twitter, and you and I both know him, and we have so many good times that we've shared with Mike North over the years.
No question.
And we're going to talk to him in just a little bit. But speaking of the Cubs and White Sox, and those were pretty good games. I mean, it's unfortunate that there are no fans because those were exciting games, and you know how it is, Les, over the years. Some White Sox fans would somehow sneak into Wrigley Field. I shouldn't say sneak in, but they purchased tickets to get into the games, and then if the Sox won, they would stick around at the end of the games, and, they would cheer, blah, blah, blah.
And vice versa.
And vice versa, absolutely correct. And the White Sox, especially in those first two games, hit a ton, and I mean a ton of home runs. In fact, they had 27 home runs over a 7-game period, and that is a new Major League record.
Abreu did everything but bunt a home run.
That's right. And there were no cheap home runs, by the way.
No.
Every one of them. And the wind was not blowing out a gale at Wrigley for these games, but the ball was just traveling, and the White Sox hit some titanic home runs.
Jose to right field. Well struck. Very well struck. Get out of here. Bring him home for the lead. Top 6.
Speaking of Abreu, he had 6 home runs in the series, 4 on consecutive at-bats, tying a Major League record. Do you know how many people have tied that Major League record?
I think 4.
No. It's numerous. It's dozens. Dozens and dozens and dozens.
It's hard to believe.
It is hard to believe, but we looked it up. But, one of many, I should say, have hit home runs. And listen, that's not easy to do, hit four home runs in consecutive at-bats.
I was 12 years old the first time I ever saw the Cubs play the White Sox. That was the old boys benefit game. Almost every year it was played at Comiskey Park. I think twice it was held at Wrigley, but for the most part it was on the south side. In 1964, the Cubs had already beaten the Sox something like about 7 or 8 times. But things changed. The Cubs brought up a minor league pitcher named Dick Scott that you could hit off of. And the White Sox in that game, Martin, that's in JC, McNerney, you remember Jerry McNerney?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you had 3 guys in a row, and Ron Hanson was the other, and he was a guy that he was traded, and then they traded back for him. This is something you never, ever seen done.
Ron Hanson, of course, Mr. Unassisted triple
play. Right. And
One of the great plays in Major League history.
He was also a good player with Baltimore before the Sox eventually got him. But the thing about that is, in that game, and that was the biggest crowd that ever watched a Cubs versus White Sox game. They had a rope in right field.
I was there. I was at that game as a fan.
52,712.
And any ball that was hit into that crowd, it was weird because
none ever went into the crowd. They all went over the.
Well, yes, but if any ball had gone into that crowd, it was a ground rule double.
Correct.
And they had, I don't know, a couple thousand people or something like that, ridiculous in the outfield.
That seated about 48,000 at Comiskey Park in those days, but they had 52,000. In that game, it was close, and then all of a sudden, the White Sox got 3 home runs on 3 straight pitches against Dick Scott. And we're talking not 3 straight at bats, 3 straight pitches. Home run, home run, home run. We got to see the scoreboard go off, which was a real luxury in those days.
Listen, in our Crass games, didn't we hit home runs on 3 consecutive pitches?
Yeah, but George Koch made sure that they didn't count. He used to steal games from us, remember?
And when we played the Bears at Phillips Stadium, no offense, Les, you were on the mound.
They did bunt the ball over the fence. It didn't matter. It didn't matter who was pitching. It could have been Juan Marichal. It could have been Sandy Koufax. They were still going to hit that ball over the fence.
Yeah,
and they did everything but put it in the Chicago River. And by the way, I had some restricted flight balls. And when the first time I threw one, the umpire behind
got rid of it.
He said, "You can't use this," and he threw it away. And we had guys like Kurt Becker and Keith Van Horn, and they could just absolutely burp the ball over the fence.
Well, I was playing right field in that particular game, and I had to climb the fence to get the ball.
You never touched the ball.
Well, because they were going 100 feet over my head each and every time, so I had to climb that damn fence to get the ball.
That was a double header. We not only even got killed once, we got killed a couple of times.
Jesus, euthanasia. All right, so speaking of home runs, and the White Sox hit a ton of them recently, it got me to thinking, because there was one that hit the scoreboard for sure, and there was some of them that were like 450 feet that didn't even hit the scoreboard at Wrigley Field. And so it got me to thinking for the longest home runs in Major League history. Okay? And there's some...
Mantle hit one that almost went out of Old Yankee Stadium, which was almost impossible to do.
Well, he's got the second longest home run officially. And there's some BS list, when it comes to stuff like this. But he has the second longest one at 565 feet at the old Griffith Stadium in Washington.
But he also hit one in Yankee Stadium that was right up there, too.
Well, I don't have that on my list. I'm sure he probably did.
Griffith Stadium is, by the way, the stadium where the Bears one time beat the Redskins 73-0.
Oh, yeah, Papa Bear's adding machine.
Revenge.
Okay. The longest home run, supposedly, is by the Bambino. Okay? It's at the old Tiger Stadium, 1921. Babe Ruth hit a shot 575 feet.
When Reggie Jackson hit his in the All-Star game in 71, a game also that I happened to be at, it hit the light tower, and it carried him back to the infield. You know who was the next person to touch that baseball?
You?
Glenn Beckert. And he was playing at second base.
He's playing second base. It bombarded all the way back to him.
But if that roof wasn't there, or the light tower, that ball that Reggie Jackson hit, I want to know if that would have gone almost 600 feet. That was absolutely crushed.
Well, it was actually listed, Les, at 539 feet, that particular home run.
It would have gone further.
Okay, well, there's some that you can't even measure. You and I went to a lot of those games at the old Comiskey Park when they hit the roof shots over the left field.
One by Dave Nicholson went into South Elmer Square Park over the roof.
Right. And back in those days, we would park our cars. They didn't have the parking lots for us. We would park beyond the wall in left field. And if a ball went over the roof, there was a thud over, that would hit, the roof of our cars that were parked behind the wall there. Kittle would hit him over there periodically. Greg Luzinski, the Bull, would hit him over there periodically.
They moved home plate out a little bit, and it became pretty much starting around 1980, it became a little easier to hit home runs over the roof there. The old way, it was a lot tougher.
Yeah, but, to hit a ball over the roof at the old Comiskey Park, first of all, the trajectory had to go way, way, way up there. And you had to get a pitch at least belt high or higher to get that kind of trajectory.
There were two guys who hit it over the roof and hit one of the center field bleachers. Only 2 guys have ever done that at Old Comiskey. One of them was pretty obvious.
Dick Allen?
Yep. The second one was Richie Zisk.
Okay, Richie Zisk, yeah, probably the 77 team then.
It was a 70. That's the only year he was with the Sox. He became a free agent and jumped to the Texas Rangers the next year. And the first time he came in as a Ranger, a guy who was a big hero, your boy, were they booing him loudly.
Well, there's the famous home run by Dick Allen when Harry Carey used to do periodically.
He was sitting out there.
He was sitting out in the center field, and they didn't even have the wall back in those days.
And he had his net.
Bullpen.
He had his net.
He almost had a duck because it goes, oh, look out, it's coming, or something like that. And it was like a 2-iron shot. And he was legitimately, it was what, 440 to the wall back in those days?
Yep.
440 to the wall. And then, they're up in the little bleacher area beyond the center field wall. So that's a 500-foot shot.
They had a fence that made it a lot easier to hit him out to center field.
Well, that's when they had the bullpen back out there.
They took that out. When
Right.
Bill Veeck repurchased the team in 1976, he changed it. That was also the year he got rid of that AstroTurf infield and went back to straight grass.
Oh, God, some of the dumbest things ever. Do you also remember one of the famous catches of all time at the old Comiskey? I can't remember if it was
Ken Berry?
It was. I was going to say either him or Jim Landis, but Ken Berry dove
Landis
over the wall. He flew over the wall.
They were both great center fielders. I think Landis was probably better, and he was one of my favorite players as a little kid. He used to lead off. He wore number 1. Nellie Fox would bat second to be number 2, and Floyd Robinson would wear number 3. So you had 1, 2, and 3. But the bottom line is when you had Landis in there, some games I was disappointed because he wasn't in the starting lineup. Remember Al Heist?
God, I don't.
He would play sometimes in center field rather than Landis. He was okay, but Jim Landis, what an incredible center fielder he was.
He truly was. But was it Berry who flew over the wall?
Yep.
Okay, they had the bullpen
and
back
he had
on
power,
those days.
too. Ken Berry put some over the fence, and he set off that scoreboard a few times.
Didn't he also star in F Troop?
F-Troop!
Yeah, exactly, same name. No, Ken Berry, he made some phenomenal catches over that shortened fence.
He truly did. Oh, what was the girl's name on F Troop that Captain Parmenter Ken Berry had the hots for?
Melanie Patterson.
That was her real name, right?
Yes.
But what was her name on the show? Something Wrangler, something or other. She was hot.
She was. She absolutely was.
And what was the name of the Indian troop? What were they called? The Hakawas?
Oh, my gosh.
Melanie Patterson, she played Wrangler Jane.
Wrangler Jane.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And she had really, really tight blue jeans. I mean, she had those painted on.
No, she had tight blue jeans.
Oh, boy, did she ever.
Anyway, so getting back to sports. So, yeah, Reggie
A different kind of sport.
Yes. Adam Dunn has a 535-foot home run at the Great American Ballpark. That's the one he was a member of the Reds.
And that is a home run haven, that ballpark.
It really is. I think that along with Camden Yards are the two ballparks in my mind nowadays that are just home run havens for sure.
Camden Yards, though, Boot Powell Steakhouse is still one of my favorite places.
Dave Kingman had a 530-foot home run as a member of the Mets.
Against the Cubs.
Against the Cubs is correct.
He put it down Kenmore Avenue, which, of course, we saw Sammy Sosa later on. He used to hit some down there, too. But the ones that were nailed by Kingman, oh, my gosh.
Jim Tomei with a 511-foot home run as a member of the Cleveland Indians. Who has the longest home run in White Sox history at, I guess it would have been U.S. Cellular at that point? You should know this one, Les. It's a trivia question.
Would that have been like the first year or whatever? Was that by
It was early.
Cecil Fielder?
No.
Because he did hit a bomb out of there.
But it's a White Sox player.
Oh, who was it?
It was to right center field. It did land on the concourse. Joe Borchard.
Oh, yes, it was, indeed.
Joe Borchard at the cell, 504 feet. And it's
Another one of those can't miss players who turned out to be
a miss.
blah.
All right, I'm going to tell you the longest home run that's not official, and it wasn't even in a game, actually. It was during batting practice. This is when I was a kid, and I used to go to Cub games, and, we'd get up early, we take the Northwestern, we take the Skokie Swift, we take the Davis Street L, yada, yada, yada. We get to Wrigley Field and we got up really early in the morning to do this. We get to Wrigley Field at 8:30, whatever, and then we finally get led into the ballpark. And usually I got into left field, but it was so crowded that day, we got into right field, okay? No big deal either way. We're sitting in batting practice, and they're playing the Giants, and the Giants were loaded with incredible talent.
Like McCovey?
That's where I'm going with this. It was Willie McCovey. So it's in batting practice. It obviously doesn't count, and it was probably a 60-mile-an-hour lob pitch, whatever. He hit a ball I'm not kidding. It went over the right field bleachers, and it went by the scoreboard, by the right center
Roberto
field.
Clemente once hit one past that, too, by the way.
Okay. Then that would have been, I don't even know if they measured home runs back in those days.
Unofficially.
All right, so McCovey, again, this is batting practice, and we're sitting in the right field bleachers, and we see a ball go out of the damn ballpark by the scoreboard that, if it was in a real game, this would have been a 600-foot home run.
I talked to Willie Mays a few years ago in Arizona during spring training, and I said to him, did Stretch hit the ball as far as anybody? He said, absolutely, without question. We know Mays, he could clobber the ball. They had a lot of sluggers. They had Jim Ray Hart. They had so many good players on that Giants team. But
Orlando, wasn't Cepeda on that team?
Cepeda was on that team. Mm-hmm. Eventually, he got traded to the Cardinals, as you well know, and was the MVP with St. Louis. But McCovey, oh my gosh, he used to hit some bombs. The only guy that came close to him was never with the Giants, and that, of course, was Wilver Darnell Stargell.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Les, a couple things I want to play here before we get to Mike North. Corey Crawford, who was on the Hawks Zoom this morning. Crawford had a pretty darn good series, first against Edmonton and then against Vegas. Unfortunately, the Hawks came up short ultimately, but I think he proved his worth. He's coming off the COVID, unfortunately, illness. And he's a free agent. Is he having conversations ongoing already with the Blackhawks because he is a free agent?
I would like to be back. I think, we still have a lot of great pieces on this team, and to win another Stanley Cup in Chicago would be unbelievable. So that's the number one goal is to win one more championship. Going into the meeting, I mean that's the main thing is to win a championship, to be obviously the main guy and play a lot. So we'll see how these meetings go and where we're at as an organization.
So what do you think about that, Les?
They need some help, especially on the blue line. They're going to need a lot of help there. If they get a healthy Seabrook back and Keith comes back, but they're still going to have to, and I don't know if they just want to go with young people, but they're going to have to do something of adding a veteran defenseman. I'm not talking about somebody about 33, 34 years old, but somebody that maybe is in their mid-20s, late 20s. They're going to have to get some help on that. The problem is they still have problems with that damn salary cap, which, by the way, if it wasn't for the late Mr. Bill Wirtz, the salary cap doesn't even exist. And by the way, do you know that he voted against the salary cap, even though he's the one that wanted it? He voted no because they had a floor. And he didn't want the floor. In other words, they were required to spend a certain amount of money, and he didn't like that. He wanted them not to be required to spend anything, but he still wanted the salary cap. And you know what? Like I said, nice man. I enjoyed talking to him. He was a very friendly guy. Just wasn't a good hockey owner, that's all.
All right, in regards to Corey Crawford, I think ultimately what happens here, because he went on to say in his conversation with the media this morning, and we're recording this, by the way, on Tuesday afternoon, he went on to say that he hopes to retire as a Blackhawk. He has, obviously, as a free agent, he'll have some options here or there. He wants to be the full-time goaltender. He wants to play a lot. And I think ultimately he signs a 1 or 2 year deal, maybe 1 year with an option, something like that. And let's face it, after the Hawks gave up on Robin Lehner, who's still playing for Vegas, obviously.
Big mistake.
He would have cost more money in the long run. So I think the Hawks and Corey Crawford will come to some kind of agreement. All right, let's do one other thing before we get to Mike North. And what we've tried to do also here, Les, on our Grobstein Schuster zone. And by the way, why can't I ever get top billing 1 week? Can I get top billing 1 week?
You could do that. I have no option. I have no objection either way.
I don't have any options either. That means I'm going back down to the minors. No question.
No, you can do it. I don't. Look, do you think, have I ever complained about that?
No, Les. I'm only teasing,
I know
course.
you are.
I'm
you and I
teasing.
both know that.
Yeah, we got so much history between us. We just tease each other. Anyway, Speaking of teasing, we're going to tease the following person because our rant this week, we had the great Jack Brickhouse one. And by the way,
boy.
we played, just so you know, Les, we played the Brickhouse rant for Ryan Dempster earlier today. Ryan Dempster was on our AU Memorabilia podcast, and he was dying laughing from it. He thought it was hysterical.
He always does his own Harry Carey impersonation, as we all know.
Right, he's just one of my favorites. Anyway, the rant this week, we'll just play it, and then Les, I'll have you talk about it. Go ahead, Aldo.
I was meaning to say, see, I'm getting confused now. I was meaning to say foul. I was saying fair. Lou was saying fair. We both was saying fair. So the umpires, I guess, said, well, okay. So they left it fair. That's what happened. I mean, instead of saying foul, I was saying fair. I meant to say foul, but I wasn't saying foul. Maybe I was thinking about Robbins when he thought it was foul and it was fair. But I was out there yelling to run. So it was like one of those, who's on first, what's on second situations there. You know, again, I'm thinking I'm saying foul, but I'm actually saying fair. And Lou's saying fair. It's like, well, no, it's fair. 3 outs. So I was meaning to say foul. But I don't know if it's fair or foul, to be honest with you. We don't have an angle. But it just shows you that honesty pays, I guess. You end up winning the game. So honesty pays. You learn that when you're young, and you get reminders of that throughout your life, and this is one of those times.
And he was talking about Lou Piniella, by the way.
Right.
That's the Lou he was referring to.
Now, that wasn't a rant, obviously. There was no swearing involved in that. But that, who was that? Say who it is, first of all.
Oh, the guy that Harry Carey once called Bevy Tarrington.
It was Terry Bevington. And listen, Terry Bevington was a knucklehead. I guess that's the kindest way I can put it. He was just very different as a manager. He
wasn't mean. He was just way out there.
Yeah, way out there. The one time everybody remembers, he went out to the mound and he does this. I'm pointing to my left hand, like calling him for a left-handed reliever. There was nobody warming up in the bullpen at all.
But he had already gone out to the mound once that inning, so they had to take whoever was on there out. And so the Indians were clobbering him in that particular game. And what I will never forget is they had to intentionally walk the next 2 batters with the bases loaded. They had to give the Indians 2 more runs just so the pitcher would get a little looser and whatever. It was ridiculous.
I have to ask this question. Was he stupid?
No, just dumb.
Okay. That's the minor league of stupid is dumb.
There is a difference between the two. Stupid and dumb. Stupid means you have ability, you just don't use it properly. Dumb means you're just a complete idiot.
Okay, so stupid, dumb, idiot. There's the trifecta.
And we tried to be so nice to Terry Bevington. I mean, he was having his little girl was ill, and we always tried to be real nice to the guy and whatever. And I remember one day, Robin Ventura had a just brutal ankle injury in Sarasota. The last time the Sox were in Payne Park before they moved to Arizona. And in the first game he played, he got a double. And I remember that because I was in London, England with the Bears, and we found out about that. And somebody asked him, that had to be pretty cool, saying Robin. He goes, I'm not going to answer that. That means that I think he's only good when he does it. And I remember at that point, a couple of reporters kind of stared and rolled their eyes and stuff like that. Tony Giannetti, who's a good friend of ours, she looks at him and goes, come on, Terry, what was wrong with that question? And she stood right up to him. And Bevington was kind of like, he was surprised that she stood up to him.
Yeah, I mean, Terry...
And Tony is a sweetheart. She's one of the nicest people on the planet.
100%.
And she stood right up to him, and I was so proud of her.
The thing with Terry Bevington, he was just... the best way I could describe it, he was out of his league. I mean, he was not... Much like Jim Boylan, you just didn't feel like he was an NBA head coach. It felt the same way for Terry Bevington as a major league manager. He was just out of his league, so to speak. Anyway, let's take a break here. When we come back, the one, the only, Mike North.
Hey everybody, it's Scott from AU Sports Memorabilia, reminding you to listen to Stuff Your Mom Throughout with my co-host David Schuster. And if you like sports memorabilia, okay, and
Take 2.
Hey everybody, it's Scott from Sports Memorabilia. No, I'm not from there. 3, 2.
Ah, so broadcasting is easy, is it?
Used to be.
Yeah.
AU Sports Memorabilia presents Stuff Your Mind Throughout. Look for it on the Barroom Network.
And we're back here on the Grobstein Schuster Zone podcast. I'm David Schuster. He, of course, is Les Grobstein. And now, Les, we are joined by the one and only Mike North, who you can also hear right here on the Bears Barroom Network. And you can follow him on Twitter, as I do, at North to North. And Les, you and I have so many good stories and history with Mike North. And I'll let you do a further introduction and maybe talk about the first time you ever met Mike.
Well, I knew him a long time ago, and I remember when the Score basically started out, and people, and I was working up the dial at 1000, where Mike is now, by the way, and you went up there too. And one day, someone asks me, and this was basically on the other, said, well, what do you think about the news station, the Score? And my attitude was, I hope they succeed. I think they have a chance to be very, very good, and they should be down the road. And a lot of people thought that at 1000 were mad at me for saying that. And I remember the first time I met you, Mike, you came up to me and you said, you want us to succeed. I go, you're darn right. The more people that succeed in this business, it's better for all of us. And from that point on, we were very, very close friends.
Yeah, I got to tell you guys, first, it's great, David, to talk to you again. Long-time friend, long-time guy. Same with you, Les. And I got to be honest with you. The time has flown. We were talking before we came on the air about our dogs and, you know, dogs we used to have, like Moose for you and Licorice. We've all had animals, and, you know, you wish they lasted longer than they did or than they do. And the same thing goes for, you know, people. I mean, in relationships, sometimes you see everybody, so you see them every day, and then you don't see them for 3-4 years. It's been a while since we all talked, but you're right. I remember Chet Kopic was out to get me and out to get the Score. He wanted us to fail. And I think more out of insecurity than anything else. And I just thought that there was no chance of that. But after the first 3 months, when we got 0 on our ratings book, and you know, they found out that there was a discrepancy because Nielsen didn't know how to handle a daytime-only station, which is still one of the great sports feats of the 20th century, having the 3 basic shows.
That was like Dewey defeats Truman.
Yeah, daytime only, and to do what we did. But everything worked out, and we ended up making it. And there's been a lot of people that have now enjoyed what we built. I mean, basically, guys, and there's a lot of people making money from that station, and you know, because Seth Mason just passed away, he was one of the geniuses of the Score and of WXRT, and Danny Lee's getting along in the tooth too. So, you know, I still keep in touch with Jeff Schwartz. I still keep in touch with Jesse. I still keep in touch with Freddie Hubner. I keep in touch with a ton of people. I talked to David not that long ago. So, you know, it's great to be on. But man, we need 3-4 hours, guys, don't you think, if you want to really talk about everything?
30 hours at least, minimum.
Mike, I don't know if you'll remember this, but the first time I met you, I was having dinner with George Offman, another guy who we all well know, and it was at Basta Pasta, and it still to this day has the best veal parmesan I've ever had, and I'm a big veal parm freak. And
great place, Dave.
Oh, unbelievable. And you were so magnanimous. I had just been hired over at 1000, and George and I were out, you know, having dinner that night, and you brought over a bottle Cristal for us at the dinner table, and I will never, ever, ever forget that, Mike. So I'm saying thank you again for that. And then another time that going way, way back, I remember we actually had you over to our house for dinner one time, and my daughter was only, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years old, whatever she was at the time. She's 30 now, so it tells you how time has flown. And she was as fascinated by you, and of course you have, you know, that personality about you that, you know, not only adults gravitate towards you, but so do, you know, young children. You know, they just love being around you. So I have such great memories of you with you, Mike. And I also remember a couple of times that we were up at Platteville, for instance, and we had the big parties with when I was at the Score or 1000, and you were very magnanimous those times as well. So I have a lot of great memories with you, Mike, and I'll never forget any of those.
First of all, the buying of the champagne, I was so happy for you because it's different now, it seems like, for people. Everybody's dog-eat-dog. And I was dog-eat-dog, but I was also, back in those days, but I was also happy for somebody that would get an opportunity because, to me, sports radio when you talk about what has happened in sports over the last 25, 30, 35 years, you have to put sports radio. But for what the score did and what sports radio's done around the country, cannot be denied and should be included as a top 10 for changing the media, changing the way things are done. It's not where it used to be, but it's still very effective. I feel a lot of what we did has been erased over the last 10, 12 years for whatever reason, PC, whatever. But it's got to be up there as one of the top 10 deals of all of the 20th century and on in sports, period.
In 1997, that's when the Bulls won their fifth championship out of their six. And you were in Florida, so was I. They were playing Pat Riley's Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I'll never forget this. The Bulls won the first two games in Chicago. And we went down there to Old Miami Arena, which is now a parking lot, by the way, because they've got American Airlines Arena, which is a gorgeous place, and that's on Biscayne Boulevard. And we're there, and we're sitting down near courtside, and you were right next to me. And the Bulls were blowing them right off the floor. And, you could just see across the court at courtside, and Pat Riley, he was as red as the Bulls' road uniforms. And you said to me privately, I think I'm going to ask him, would he shave his head if that would mean that you guys, that the Bulls end up losing 4 games in a row to, and we went back and forth. And I said to him, I got an idea. And you said to me, what? I said, don't do it. And you looked at me.
Well, what happened, guys?
And that clinched it. You were going to do it. You said to me, you know what? You're right. And so the game ended, and I went over to the Miami Heat locker room, and I was doing that. And all of a sudden, I walked back into the press room, and all of a sudden, I see Brian McIntyre, who's a good friend of all of ours to this day, and he is absolutely reading you the riot act, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, no.
You're the best.
Oh, no, he did it. He did it. And you basically did ask that question, and we've got that on tape somewhere. And I know that you have played it several times. And Riley, just about anybody else in sports, you probably could have gotten away with that with no problem. And knowing you like I know, you didn't care. You didn't give a darn whatsoever.
Well, I did care less because you know why? And it is because I had said I'm going to Miami with the team. Now, the night before, Bill Wennington, myself, Johnny Kerr, Jesse, John Kelly, I remember. We must have drank 8 buckets of beer. And Wennington didn't pay for one of them. Believe me when I say
I believe that.
Okay?
I totally believe you on that one.
Yeah. Now, I remember the question I was supposed to ask was, if Fred Flintstone knows that the Brontosaurus ribs are going to tip his car over, then why does he drive through the drive-thru every day and have the same thing happen? I walked in, and I told you at halftime, I can't ask him that question. I can't.
He's not lying. He's not lying.
I go, I cannot ask him that question. Dear Lord and high, I can't ask him. I'll get killed. I will, because Pat Riley's a serious dude. Pat Riley at that time would square off with his own players and knock them out. He was a Brooklyn tough guy. He's still tougher as nails, 6'8". Nobody likes to be put down in that fashion. So then I see Bob Verdi in the room. He goes, what are you going to ask him? And I said, I don't know. I got to get in line.
Wrong question, McFly. Wrong question.
And I go, if God came down tomorrow and said, if you shave your head, man, that you could beat Michael Jordan for a title, would you do it? And he goes, that's very interesting. No, because you're overmatched. And he goes, that's very interesting, sir. Where are you from? I go, that was the magic wand. We had no Twitter or nothing back then. We did anything we could to stay alive. I go, I'm Mike North. I'm from WSCR in Chicago. Good, that's interesting. 3 people grabbed me, and Brian McIntyre, the pride and joy of Queen of All Saints Parish, on Cicero Avenue. If you go down Peterson, that big church with the big Spanish front yard there, is his parents. She goes, "What the hell is the matter with you?" And they threw me out of the arena.
And anybody that worked for the Score, except me, was moved into the balcony for Game 4. I was able to still be down at courtside because I was also working for ABC Radio Sports and AP Radio, and so they left me alone.
It made me feel bad. You know what made me feel bad? Like you just said, when I would do something that would bring us attention, bring us maybe advertising, bring us national recognition or local, it came with a price to whether it was David, whether it be you, for the most part, Mike Greenberg, who couldn't get bears sometimes, not just because of me, but because of other people, but a lot of times because of me. It made everybody's job tougher, and they would tell me that. And you know what I would tell them? If we fail, you're not here.
That's
Period,
right.
End of story. It's the 3 shows. And they understood that, and Jesse would even tell them that. And I'm sure that, David, you had trouble getting guests on.
Oh, yeah.
Not only when I was there, but also because of other people.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the brand.
Oh, yeah. I had the cell phone thrown at me a couple of times over the years. And Mike, if you remember, the cell phones that we used to use way back in the day,
were like bricks.
They were like walkie-talkies, and, they hurt.
They were the size of
they
bricks.
Were like mortar shells.
I used one of those when we were in London in '86 with the Bears when they made the first ever trip over there to play the Cowboys in London, and I was still at WLS back then. Those cell phones were the size of bricks.
Not only that, but the athletes, and maybe they were right, they were scared that they were so big that there would be radiation coming from out of them or something like that. They would look at me cross-eyed.
And everything else, and by the way, Les, the London trip, I didn't like it then. I still hate those trips, to be honest with you. Don't you? Or have you guys latched on to the London trip?
I liked it because I got a lot of great frequent flyer miles on it.
That's why you liked it.
I got a ton of miles. We were flying with the late TWA, and we got to go there, and we got to. We were in first class both ways, and we had great seats and everything. And we stayed at the Intercontinental, which was kind of like the Ritz-Carlton would be today. And I set up a softball game, a 12-inch softball game, the Chicago media against the Dallas media, and they were in Thousand Oaks, California in those days. So I told the guy's name was Dent, no relation to Richard. I said, I'll make sure we have softballs and gloves for you guys, and we'll play. And we came from behind, and we beat them, and we had some pretty good people on our team, and we played in Hyde Park, famous Hyde Park in London, and we came from behind and beat them.
That's great. You guys played softball where the Stones played, and the Who and everybody else, man. Don't ever let that escape you.
Never have and never will.
What did you have for dinner that night, you maniac?
Yeah, he'll remember.
What was the temperature in the room? I mean, I tell Aldo this all the time. You remember what temperatures were? What was the temperature when Koufax pitched the perfect game in Chicago?
When he pitched the perfect game, I was only 14 years old.
Come on, Les.
I was a freshman. I was a freshman at Von Steuben.
Hey,
right,
Mike.
I know you were, but I would figured that you would have known that.
Hey, Mike, I got another story, and it actually involves both you and Dan Jiggets. And I was doing updates during your show, and it was and Jiggs, for me, I don't know if it was a rare occasion or not, he sprung for lunch that day, and I had to go out and get it. It was a place that was down the street on West Belmont. I forget the name of the place. It was sort of like a greasy spoon place,
right.
Hamburger place. And so I got the food, and I got a hamburger and fries, and same for maybe you and Jiggs also. And during the update, I thanked Jiggs. I said, hey, thanks for coughing up for lunch for everybody. The hamburger and fries is great. And he's waving his hands at me like through the glass or whatever, like don't say what you're saying, whatever. And so I didn't understand. And so the update was over, and he goes, you can't say that. My cardiologist listens to the updates and everything like that. And he's going to get really upset with me that I got food from, the place down the street, whatever the name was. So on my next update, I had to correct myself and said, hey, Dan, I just, want to let everybody know that you, of course, got carrots and celery, and all the rest of us were eating greasy fries and hamburgers.
I remember, and you're right, I remember that date, and I go, Jiggs, it's better if you tell him ahead of time. You know what I'm saying? He's a radio guy. Then I said, I will say this about Dan Jiggets. A very gentle man. But when it comes to food, I remember Seth Mason coming in one day, and we had ribs from Gale Street Inn, and I had them delivered, naturally, And back in those days, I had a nice side business called, comp stuff. You know what I mean? It wasn't really payola or nothing, but, you'd fit a mention here or there. And especially like places like Gibson's and stuff. But one time we got stuff from Gale Street, and Seth Mason comes in during a commercial, and we're eating the ribs, and he grabs both boxes. And Jiggs goes, "Where are you going with my ribs?" Like that. And I go, "Yeah, where are you going with his ribs?" "And my ribs." And he goes, "Company policy. Okay, XRT. Well, they had the turntables. You have other things. You had to actually put records on the round table, so you couldn't get your hands." He goes, "Jiggs, put it down," like that. So he put them back down. I go, "Seth, what is the matter with you? Come on in and tell us. We didn't know there was a rule like this," and stuff like that. But it was hilarious because you saw Jiggs, what made him a football player.
Yeah.
I saw him get to his feet faster than I've ever seen before. But I will say this. The monsters might have to come back to quell all the disturbances around the country.
It should be brought back. It should be brought back.
We may have to come back, and because there was a much gentler time. I thought it was nuts back then, but it's crazy now. We might have to come back. And I'll tell you this about Dan Jiggets. You'll never find a more quality guy. He let me run with the ball. And, man, I remember about 10 years ago when they were courting him for governor. And not a lot of people know this. And, man, he'd be a beautiful governor, and he'd be a fair governor. But I think he's got grandkids now, so that baby's run out the window.
Hey, Mike, I get to ask this question a lot, and I ask it of other people as well, and I'll ask it of you because, I've interviewed a ton of people over the years, both in and out of sports, and you, of course, have both on the air and maybe out in the field as well. Who's the one person who you really enjoy talking to in sports, and who's the one real asshole that you couldn't stand?
Well, Jeremy Roenick was the one I enjoyed talking to.
Yeah, he's a prince.
Yeah, Jeremy Roenick was there for me. Jeremy Roenick, we had a thing called Top Dog. I decided to have who had the best hot dog in town promotion tied in for what I used to do before I even got into the business, and we had it at Maywood Park. It was unbelievable. We had 30 hot dog stands from Roma's to Wally's to Fluky's. Everybody wanted in. South Side, North Side. And they had stands all the way along the thoroughfare. And Roenick, me, and Beebe were hosting on a Saturday. And all the vendors were there. People came to Maywood. It was a great idea. It was a food court, only with hot dogs. And Jeremy Roenick, the night before, got injured. Broke his leg. He drove his motorcycle there in a cast?
Yeah.
He drove his motorcycle in a cast on a Saturday after... I don't know if he broke his leg, if it was ligament damage, but he drove with one foot up on almost on the fender, the front fender, if he could, and the other one, on the pedal. But he showed up, so I'd say it was him. Guys, I didn't like talking to. I liked them all. To be honest with you, I think I can't remember too many bad ones. I remember many controversial ones, from Jim Brown to Isaiah Thomas.
Brian Cox. How about Brian Cox?
Well, Brian Cox, he told everybody, I don't want to listen to that bankrupt. I heard that guy went bankrupt at a hot dog stand, which wasn't true. Because, in fact, I kept my hot dog stand open in '92 because, just in case the score didn't make it, I had a backup plan. Even though I never even entertained it. But then once we hit pay dirt, once things start getting better, we sold out. We had stands for 16 years, but somebody told Brian Cox that I went bankrupt. Well, I've never filed for bankruptcy in my life. I guess he yelled it over the air. But I will hold fast. Look, I had nothing against Brian Cox. My job was to diagnose his play. Now, maybe I was a little harsh at times. I was more of a fan.
He said that you could put your lips in a certain area of him.
Yeah,
and he said that when we were in Dublin, Ireland, and I had the table set up, and it had a big score banner on it. And he was walking by. This was about 9 in the morning, and this would have been 3 a.m. Chicago time. And as he's walking by, he screams out, "You tell that Mike North he can kiss my black you know what? And I said, you just said that over the pond all the way back to Chicago. He says, good. And when I told you that, you said, oh, good, at least he knows I'm still here.
Well, he knew we were there. But you know what's funny? I heard this, I guess, the Montreal Hero. I mean, I played basketball my whole life on the blacktop. Different people, different types of people. Doesn't matter. Punk-ass white bitch or whatever. I mean, Brian Cox called me that. That's just playground stuff. And you know what? Nobody wants to be beat up, guys. I didn't want... But Brian Cox, I don't think, was a very good player for us.
He wasn't.
And I think it panned out. I think and I hear he's doing marvelous. I think he's done well. He's got I guess he raises horses and stuff. I'm happy for everybody. But at the time, my job was not to kowtow to organizations. And they went out and looked for a street guy, and they said, we want a guy that's going to tell it like it is. So when they got that guy, I mean, that's what happened. And, you know, other guys, I think, were the same type of way. They might have had a different style, but, I mean, Terry and Danny were no walks in the park if you weren't getting the job done. But Tom Scher was more like, Tommy was sort of like, and I've told Tommy this, he was the straight guy. He was Niedermeyer in Animal House. He was...
Boy, is this great. You know, the thing about Tom Scher, look alive. Remember that?
Right. He was more of the, he gave us credibility. He was on TV. He was a sports guy. He got great exposure. So he started things off, and then from there we tear it on. But I don't think anybody had a walk in the park, not only from the shows, but also from the reporters. I mean, you know, we had reporters like Dave and Greenberg and other people that asked tough questions, man.
Well, no doubt. And, you know, as things moved on and we moved along, I mean, the thing about Brian Cox, he was just, he was hilarious. And I reminded him a few years later that he had said to you over the pond all the way back from Dublin Iron to Chicago, and he said, oh, that was one of his proudest moments ever. And when I told you that...
I've had people mad at me. I have people that... Look, it goes with the territory. I understood that. I understood also that you have a great shelf life if you do a good job, and you know what? You can make money, and I wasn't going to change my style. I never was. I was tried. Other people that took over the score down the line tried to change me. I remember one program director saying less energy. I said, well, that's never going to happen. I said,
less
I'm
energy.
Be the way I go, you're here because I had a lot of energy.
Well, Mike, I don't think there's any question. You made the score. I mean, other people certainly contributed, but I don't think the score would be where it was then or now if it wasn't for all your contributions.
Well, you know what, Dave? I think that people don't know, and people should know the history of the score. And what's great is I know Aldo's been asking me about the movie. Raging Mouth is a movie that I just talked to the movie guys today, and I'm talking to them again tomorrow because this COVID thing. I was supposed to start production already by late 2020, and now things are starting to loosen up a little bit, so we're going to start moving. But in the movie, I'll give everybody a sneak preview how the score started, because you can hear any story you want, but we have it on tape, we have it in writing. Danny Lee's been interviewed for 3 hours. The story goes, and Les, you'll love this story too because you're a storyteller, and so are you, Dave, is that they came in as WXRT people into my hot dog stand. And 1 week Bob Verdi wasn't going to be at WXRT to do Athlete's Feet, so they brought in Tom Pajork. I said to them, how do I get the host? They go, well, nobody knows you. Nobody knows who you are. Because I said, I think I could do as good a job as Verdi. Give me a chance. They go, no chance. Nobody knows you. So then I brokered time, and for 2.5 years, I did the NFL Handicap Show. Yes, folks, I handicapped football in 1989, even though most stations will tell you now it's the brand new thing. Bottom line is, Danny Lee and them heard those tapes. They offered me the weekend job. But then another guy bowed out with Jiggets. I got the opportunity. But the original idea came to pass when they came in, and it was rumored, and we all read Robert Friedrich still, that Danny Lee was going to start a cool country or jazz station. And he had just bought the call letters WJZZ. Well, you can ask BB. BB, to this day, I was fuming. I go, B, there's like 20 sports radio stations in this country. Denver, San Diego, New York with the Fan, Los Angeles. I go, Chicago gets a sports station to get gas. They're not going to do anything with jazz and country. Well, lo and behold, the next day, Danny Lee and Seth Mason walk in. And there's a line. And there's 5 people working. I go to them, and it's raining out. I go, hey. I go, what are you guys doing? He goes, what do you mean? I go, you're going to start something like jazz or cool country? He goes, yeah. I go, you should start a sports station. And BB's going, to Mike, would you please wait on the people? So I go back on the register. I start waiting on the people. Then I get to them. And they're trying to order, and Seth Mason ordered his usual. This is a big-ass hot dog stand with people coming in, factory workers. Seth ordered a turkey sandwich on white with a leaf of lettuce. He says, and make sure the leaf isn't brown. I said, don't worry, we don't serve brown lettuce. I said to Danny Lee, Danny, start a sports station. She goes, Mike, let them eat. They eat. I chase them out the door. It's pouring rain. That weekend, because they were supposed to meet Monday to decide what they were going to do, cool country or jazz. That weekend, Danny Lee, and you guys remember when the newspaper, David and Les, was like what, like as thick as a brick?
Yeah.
Yeah, where you had nothing. I mean, you had, it was like War and Peace. Well, Danny Lee goes to the convenient place on a Sunday, buys the Sunday Tribune, Sunday Sun-Times. He sits down at home. He counts the advertisements in the entertainment section. There's 2 of them. 2 of them. You know, and a couple of ads for like Shoe Buzz or one of those. Then he goes to the sports sections. 35 ads in the Sun-Times. Because the Sun-Times sports section was as thick as the paper is now, back then. The whole paper now isn't as thick as the sport. And the Tribune had about 45. That Monday they meet. Harvey Wells, Seth Mason, Norm Weiner, all the guys met. And they go, what kind of station are we going to start? He goes, we're going to start a sports station. And Seth Mason goes, you're going to listen to that fucking hot dog guy? and Danny said, yeah. And then Harvey or somebody said, well, we don't know nothing about sports. He goes, we better learn. So they took the idea, and the genius of Danny Lee was having the sales staff already. He knew he put $700,000 into it, and then 4 years later he sold it for $77 million because he listened to the goofy guy, saw the advertising in the paper, projected that, visionized that into the Scores advertising budget, because he told me during this 3-hour interview we did for the movie, he goes, Mike, I got to be honest with you. The first year at the Score, we sold advertising for $12 for 1 minute. You know how much XRT got? I go, well, how much? He goes, even then, he goes, 200. I go, wow, well, what are you telling me that for? I mean, he goes, by the end of the year, XRT was selling for 200, Score was selling for 200 after the first year. So he started making money right off the bat with that station, and he never looked back. And he had the balls, and he had the infrastructure, guys, as you know. He had offices and everything that he could refurbish on one side while doing, while going with XRT and putting money in his coffers while he was trying to make the sports station go.
You were the architect, Mike. You just were. I mean, it was your concept, and somebody else ran with it in conjunction with your idea.
Right. Right, and you know what? The only thing that burns me up is I don't mind not getting credit for things, but what I don't like is if I hear somebody else is taking credit for something that they didn't do, that maybe you or Danny Lee or Seth Mason did. That's the only time I would get upset, but that's how it goes. That's going to be in the movie, and I'm really excited because we're going to start doing the movie real soon, and it's going to be basically, I mean, from where I went from the high school days, arguing on the street corners, as you guys know what that's like in the playground.
Especially at Sen. Especially at
Sen. To the big contract I got in the mid-'90s.
And Mike, I will say this: Hollywood, I should say, Los Angeles had the Playboy Mansion. but it was nothing compared to Pappyland. Nothing compared to Pappyland in Park Ridge, and boy, did we have some wingdings at that place. And the bar that you had downstairs was the best bar in the city, in the whole area.
Yeah, it was a 20-seat bar. Well, what I did is BB found a frame house. We knocked it down. We moved from Palatine. We built this big house, and then I built before they had flat screens, you had to have brackets. I had a total of 17 TVs in the house, but I had 6 TVs in the basement and a big TV. In fact, I'd have 30, 40 people at the house. I must have had 100 parties. Holyfield, Tyson, 25 guys. Football with all you guys would come. Everybody, I think, for the most part. I don't think Les ever came over.
I was there.
He was always working. Les was on the enemy team a lot, too. I couldn't even find Les.
No, I was there a couple of times. I've been at Pappyland.
Yeah, you were there. I think everybody was there. We had parties and we had sales parties. I threw $40,000 bashes. I didn't care. I'm glad BB cared. But I took family. My wedding party on vacations. On my 25th anniversary, we went to Italy. Took 35 people. But Pappyland was special. I mean, Dale Sayers' party down there. Jimbo Colvert. Doug Buffone, Ed O'Bradovich. It would be funny. We'd have big money riding on the games, and Jesse would have a $25 fantasy bet. I'd want to, we'd have guys with 5 dimes on the game, and Jesse goes, I need this touchdown. and somebody else would go, I got 5,000 on the other team, pal. And then Jesse would, just Jesse, keep it down a little bit, would you please? You're in the $25 league, you know what I mean? But we had so much fun there, and that was some good times too. I mean, you know what? The industry's such a great industry, and I just think that I pray for the industry daily, guys. That's all I'm going to tell you. I pray for the industry daily. I know things are different now, but I think things got to get a little bit tougher. I think you got to get a little bit tougher on the air. Have a little bit more raw every so often. Don't be afraid to open your mouth. See, back then, Danny Lee paid you so good, and other people paid you so good. You didn't have to work other jobs and be beholden to somebody. And that's what I think hurt some people's credibility. If you work for the score only, like me, I'm sorry, and I produced my own TV shows. If I had to work at another station that was owned by one of the owners, it just takes away some of you. It does. I know I would have thought twice, and I don't know. That's a juggling act that guys got to do now. You know what I mean? That a lot of us didn't have to do before.
Yeah, it's obviously strange times with what's going on in the world right now. Not only sports, but everywhere. But it's also not the same as it was back in the day, Mike. Those are times that I will forever cherish. My times working in sports radio with people like yourself and Les and everybody else. It's just not the same. That's just the fact.
You used to go on one-year deals, didn't you?
I go on 1-minute deals.
But I always thought you were on a string of one-year deals. You know what I mean? I didn't know you were on 1 minute.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, Mike. I never had a deal at the Score. Not once. I was on a minute.
Not even when you were with us?
Not even then. Never had a deal.
Okay.
Nope.
Cool.
I was.
Well, you were trying to get one with me.
Oh, of course. Listen, I saw.
Did you get raises?
What the hell is that? What is
I need to go in this direction.
What is a raise? What is that? You want what?
You know what, Mike? It doesn't make a difference anymore.
No, I just took the plane. I did a Patsy Cline. I just went into, remember the Patsy Cline story?
No,
hey,
go
what's
ahead.
That? Oh, that's a mountain. No, those were crazy days, though. I mean, look at Jesse Rogers.
Yes.
Jesse's at AM 1000. Judd Surratt, he's the announcer for the Boston Bruins. Look at Greeny. At one point, I was working the morning show for Fox National, 220 affiliates. I was going up against Greeny. We had 2 Chicago guys in the morning working on different stations. Look at, a lot of guys. Matt Spiegel. There's a lot of guys that started with us that are. Jay Hood just got a morning gig with Kaplan from 7 to 10. And Jay, nobody's paid their dues like him. Oh, I mean, he finally got his an opportunity to do something before 6 o'clock. To be honest with you, so I don't know if you know what the daytime. Les, I'm sort of surprised to see you up this early. You've been known as the night guy.
You asked my girlfriend Kathy. By the way, she said to say hello to you. By the way,
I said I.
I will. She knows I'm pretty much very close to being a 24-hour person anyway.
Do you sleep?
No, he hangs from a hook like Dracula.
I'm like a Mercidial or something along that
Hey,
line.
Les, I'm a Sen High School boy. You're a Von Steuben guy.
Correct.
With the red and white unis.
That's it.
And I told somebody that I heard a story that Les, when I was a vendor in 69 and 70, you might have been up in the upper deck announcing the games on a tape recorder.
True story.
Did you ever do that?
Absolutely true story.
Okay.
I used to do it all the time, and you know what? I learned a lot. Look, when I was in school at Von Steuben,
Right.
and I used to ditch classes. We lived right near the Brown line. Today it's called
Absolutely, right there, buddy.
It was called the Ravenswood Else, Kimball and Lawrence, and Roosevelt was just south of there.
As good as you can.
Yeah, so I would, after a certain period, I would walk down Kimball, and I would jump on the Ravenswood, and I'd go to Wrigley Field, and a lot of my teachers would say, "Why are you doing this?" Because all the crap you're teaching me now, I won't need that later on. I don't need algebra. I don't need trigonometry. I don't need any of that stuff. And at couple of reunions down the road, including one a couple of years ago, a couple of my counselors that are still alive, they came up to me and said, "See, you needed to know it." I go, "No, I didn't. What you guys, this was like that song when I think about all the crap I learned in high school by
Paul Simon. Paul Simon.
Paul Simon was the guy who did that. And I said, the bottom line is I don't need any of this crap you guys were trying to teach me back then. And I learned a lot more taking a tape recorder and sitting in the stands at Wrigley or Comiskey or at Chicago Stadium than I learned from any classes that I took in those days.
Oh, there's no doubt. I got thrown out junior year. What? Look, you don't get thrown out. You throw yourself out. Okay? I had like 2 credits. I needed like 60. I was going to be there until I was 50. Okay? I was going to outgrow the desk. So I leave. But the best part about it is, you're right. I never worried, but my parents were pissed. Oh, were they pissed? And my dad was upset a little bit, but that's okay. I said, I'm going to go to work. I went to work for the city and all this other stuff. But I was a vendor in 69 to 70. And I told my old man, I'm going to make so much money at Wrigley Field in September and for the World Series. It's going to be unbelievable because I was selling Cokes, and at the time you got $1 a case. I used to sell on a doubleheader 40 cases. You're making $40. You're 16 years old in 1969. That's good ball. That's good bucks. And it never panned out. Okay, it never panned out. But you did basically with what you were doing, what I was doing. I wasn't worried about what I was going to do in the future. For some reason, people always harp on education. My parents did, and everything else like that. And I said, they don't teach me what I want to know. They don't teach me. They don't keep me interested. I am so damn bored. And you know, I'll be the first to admit, if I hadn't met BB, I'd still be looking to figure out what I was going to do. But things took place that helped me. But I remember my mom and dad were absolutely destroyed by that. But you finished, didn't you, Les?
I finished Von Steuben. I still have my diploma from 1969, and what a great year that was. That's when they ended up, the Cubs blew an 8-game lead, and they ended up losing by 8 to the Mets. And by the way, I still have a bunch of things from that time. I have a photo taken with Ernie Banks and Fergie Jenkins the year before Apollo 11 took off for the moon. I still have that picture with those guys.
Wow. I'll tell you what was beautiful about Ernie.
Excuse me, that was a day before Apollo 11 took off, not a year before.
Okay, like everybody's going to give a shit. Okay? This is what I'm talking about.
That's the best line of this podcast.
I mean, that everybody's going to care about that. I'm not going, wait a minute, I think it was the day before. No. But Ernie Banks was a prince, Les. In fact, Jesse Jackson, when we got him to help get him the statue, Jesse Jackson calls me and he says, Mark, it's Jesse Jackson. I go, oh, what's up, Jess? Listen, I went to the Tribune stockholders meeting, and I'll tell you what, they didn't even pay me. They had me on the pay no mind list. I need your help. I go, what do you need me to do? Because this is going to be one of the small narratives in the flick. He says, I need you to get on the radio and help us get this statue for Ernie Banks. They got statues for this guy, for announcers, for Harry, and he didn't have nothing against that. But he couldn't believe they don't have a statue for a player. So I go, what are you going to do? I'm going to go see McDonough. Well, McDonough had him on the pay no mind list, too. Then I started talking. I had him on the score, and I started talking about it on the radio. And the next thing you know, he calls me. And he goes, hey, man, I think we might get this. Like that. He goes, hey, man, I think we might get the statue for Ernie. I go, that's great. I says, hey, remember what I told you? What? You better give me a mention, or I'll never do nothing for you again. I'm telling one of the civil rights leaders of the 60s, you better give me a mention. Or seriously, because I went out of my way for you. He goes, I'll take care of you. And he did. And that's how that statue got done for Ernie Banks. In fact, you can go on YouTube and see Ernie Banks thanking me because somebody told me about that. I didn't even know about it because, I mean, WGN, when they went to commercial when that happened. But that was a big thrill, too. A guy you watched as a child, you helped get a statue for, you know? So, I mean, that was unbelievable. And we were talking about high schools and Von Steuben. How would you like, I'm thrown out of school, and the other day, BB shows me this. I got thrown out of Sen. My counselor said I was a disgrace and a bum. He told Fritzy that. He told us all that. All those guys. You guys are all bums. You know, that's how they used to massage your ego. You're bums and you'll never make nothing of yourself. It's a damn guidance counselor, right? I can't find the guy, and I looked for him in 99 because she brought out the program in 1999. I gave the commencement speech at the graduation for Sen High School graduates. That's sweet. That's coming home under your own on your own terms, having accomplished something into an educational institution that had somebody come up that actually got thrown out of school by them.
Hey, Mike, we all can't wait to see the movie.
Yeah.
I just can't wait to see it. I mean, it's
all right. It's a pain in the ass. To be honest with you.
I'm sure that the build up to it, of course, always is with almost anything. But
you're in it, Dave.
I am. Who's playing me?
Yeah.
Who's playing me? And do I get any women in it?
Yes, you get. There's a bevy of them. They're waiting for you at the car.
Oh God!
After a Blues game.
It must be a fictional movie then.
Make sure that you got the Lee Elia tirade in there because there's people working for the Cubs today that weren't even around then, and they still hate my guts for that one.
Oh, you know who? Oh, they hate. Man, I can't tell you any front office that likes me.
They all hate my guts over there.
Eddie,
who was the lady there?
Are you talking about Sharon?
Oh, Sharon.
I miss her. I wish she was still there.
Huh?
I said I wish she was still there.
She was nice?
Oh, the best.
Oh, well, I feel sort of bad now, but that's beside the point. I gave her quite the hard time, but that's okay.
Okay, it comes with the territory, Mike. Hey,
well, I understand that. I'll tell you what, I hope she's doing well. See, that's how I am now. See, I look at birds now. I don't think I saw a bird for 45 years. I was always pushing forward. I smell I'm happily retired. This quarantine thing's the best thing that ever happened. I got 4 basketball games a day. It's Thanksgiving every day.
Isn't that great? I tell you what.
I can't believe it. I'm watching games at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday.
Oh, I'm in hoops.
I go, how long is it? They go, this quarantine better be over soon. I go, not by me. Not if we're going to play sports like this where we're going to call off shit and then all of a sudden there's the only thing I'm mad about, like today, there's no Major League Baseball on. You got like 12 games. How can you do that? You got an opening here. The NBA's not playing today except do tonight. You got no NHL, I don't think. If you do, it's late. How can they do that? Mm-hmm. They have completely, I mean, you got to have a couple games on. There's kids that are home all over the country. Yeah. Little leaguers, traveling leaguers, everything.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, we could do this all day and all night.
Oh, you mean we're not done?
No. Wait, we haven't even talked about wrestling or anything else that we could do.
Oh my God, we haven't even scratched the surface, you know?
Well,
I mean, the three of us, and then we're on the great How about Bears Barroom fit my guy Aldo?
Yeah, and he's sitting right here, and he's
Isn't he something?
he's a proud papa right now. Let me tell
He
you.
left?
He's hyperventilating over here.
I never make. I don't. I only try. I tried. My goal in life is to make Aldo laugh once every 2 minutes.
Oh well, listen, we make him laugh. Les does.
Yeah.
Les does for sure.
Oh my God.
I know it. I saw him. I could hear him laughing. I know him.
It's
I
been
know him
great.
like the back of my hand. He's my guy.
I've been looking forward to the three of you doing this show together for months now, and you guys did not let me down. Great storytelling and a lot of laughs.
If it wasn't for the Bears Bar Room, I wouldn't have been in the Sun Times and gone 18-1-1. I wouldn't have been noticed nationally. I wouldn't have been written up nationally. I wouldn't have. And before we go, do you think most of my foes, are they over me getting the ESPN gig yet?
I think they're still shocked.
I heard people were picking up their tongues, their teeth. They were on their knees screaming, "Why? He's back, why?" And we have a great thing. We just got a big sponsorship from Prop Swap, bringing in some money. And are they over it, Dave? Are they over it? The people that you know.
Oh, I'm in quarantine. I don't know anybody anymore.
How about you, Les? Are they over it yet? Over at the old Chapola?
Anything that you do does not shock anybody. Trust me on that one. Nobody will be surprised.
It's all due. Listen, you guys are with the right outfit here. I'm telling you right now.
It's a growing
You're
company.
With the right guy.
Growing
this guy's
company.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we got to go.
my guy.
We seriously have to go, but we'll do this again next week. How's that?
Anytime you want. I'm here. You know what? When Aldo said we're going to be a little late, I shifted one of the pillows.
And
I waited.
print it. Just remember that line. And print it.
I love you guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Al. Take care, guys.
God bless.
Hey everybody, it's Aldo, and make sure you subscribe to the Bears Barroom Radio Network. That way you won't miss any of the shows, including all of the Mike North Advantage shows. Over the last few weeks, he's had on as guests Mike Ditka,
I like Mitch Trubisky. I think he's one hell of a football player.
Jim McMahon,
I would have loved to play with Mike Ditka. He was a hell of a football player, great tight end, but he called plays like a tight end.
Joe Theismann,
Look at the Bears. I hope Mitchell Trubisky has a year like he had in 2018.
and Hawk Harrelson.
Hawk Harrelson. How are you, Hawk?
All right, big guy, what are we going to argue about today?
Nothing.
It's the Mike North Advantage, every week here on the Barroom Network.
And welcome back to the podcast, the one and only Pappy. My God, we could have talked to him for hours and hours and hours, more or less.
Oh, it's some things never change, and in this case, they don't.
No, they don't. And listen, there's a lot of stories I could never tell, even on a podcast, and that's going pretty far when you can't tell certain stories on a podcast, even. But yeah, I mean, and I mean this in sincerity. If it wasn't for Mike, I don't know if, just basically starting even sports radio. Listen, I wanted to get in at the Score at the beginning. I did. And I didn't get in at the beginning. And I felt like I was cut from my junior varsity baseball team all over again when I wasn't able to get in the first time around. And then I did some other things on the periphery. And then ultimately, I got in at 1000 with ESPN. And then I came over to the Score. And then I was working with Mike and yourself, Les, and so many other guys. But if it wasn't for Mike, honestly, when I say this with all sincerity. Mike started sports talk radio. Other people, of course, were there at the beginning, but Mike made the station because he was controversial, like he said. He did his job, and he did it well. So if it wasn't for Mike, I think a lot of people would not have the success that they had in sports talk radio, and that certainly includes me.
In '96, when the Bulls went 72-10, they were getting ready to move into the NBA Finals against Seattle. And what did the station? I was working for 1000 at the time, and we were getting our ass kicked by the Score. The Score was a 500-watt daytime-only station, and we had 50,000, and they were kicking our butt for a good reason. People were asking, "Oh, how do you like it over?" I go, "I'll be honest with you, we suck." Based on what everybody else has got going on there. And I was in Seattle for the networks. I was covering the Bulls and the Sonics in the finals, and I get there, And we had stopped. We were no longer doing local shows on 1000. They were they kind of were carrying. There was simulcasting and stuff like that. And I run into North, and I run into Terry Boers, and I ran into other. And they said to us, "We're going to be 24 hours within about 6-7 months, and you're going to be our nighttime guy." And Boers was pretty emphatic about that. It absolutely happened. I remember when we were still on the air at 1000, Mike woke me up one morning. He says, "We're going to get you away from those losers, and we're going to get you over here where you absolutely belong." I said, "Anything you say, Mike." I didn't take it all that seriously at that time. And sure enough, it all came to fruition.
Mike is actually sort of like the kingmaker. I mean, seriously, and he made, and even telling some of the stories that he just told us. I mean, he made things. He still does, makes things happen. And proud to be with him again here on the Bears Barroom Network. And he's right. This is a growing entity here, and knock on wood, we will continue to flourish. Anyway, I just want to recite that story one more time that I told him right off the bat, because I was at Basta Pasta with George Hoffman, and I had just been hired at 1000 at the time. And he came over to the table, super magnanimous. It's the first time I think I had met him at that point. I knew of him, but I had not met him. And he brought over a bottle of Cristal to the table. And at that point, I'm no connoisseur of champagne or anything, but at that point, I think the only thing I had was like $5.99 Andre at best. And here's all of a sudden a $200 or $300 bottle of Cristal, which seriously to me didn't taste that much different. So I'm still not a connoisseur, but just the thought that this guy who didn't even know me brought over magnanimously a $300 or $200 bottle of Cristal to the table. It astounded me then, and it still astounds me. So I will forever appreciate that, Mike. I really, really will.
I will too. When I had a chance to go over there, and when they moved the score to 24 hours, it went to 1160 at that point. Eventually 670, which is what they still are today. And I left there, not my own choice, my own doing, and I thought I would never, ever be doing local radio in Chicago again from that point. And one morning, Mitch Rosen calls me up, says, "Would you like to resurrect Score Overnight?" And I said, "I'll be, I'm listening." He says, "Come on down, let's have it." And we had a meeting for about 5 minutes. We had a deal, and I've been at the Score ever since. And there's a lot of people I have to thank, and Mitch is one of them. Certainly, Mike North had a lot to do with me going there at the beginning. Guys like Jiggets and Terry Boers and Dan McNeil and people like that. And now I'm working with Mac again.
You're about to witness the work of an eidetic. That is someone whose memories are more vivid beyond that of most mortals. Today, we will put that to the test. This is Stump the Grobber.
Oh, please.
And we were... I knew Aldo was going to play that. So, yes, it is time for Stump the Grobber, and we do have 2 questions, Les, and I can tell you, you are going to ace both of these. I'm 1,000% sure. I'll be shocked if you don't get both of these correct very quickly. All right, so here we go. This is from Jose Torres, and he asks you, what Hall of Fame defenseman holds the Blackhawks' career record for penalty minutes?
Hall of Fame defenseman. Can't be Pierre Palat. I mean, he is a Hall of Famer, and we all know that there's others
Think
that have
of
done...
Blackhawks defensemen who have gone into the Hall of Fame.
Well, we know Keith Magnuson is not a Hall of Famer, and boy, did he have a lot of penalty minutes.
Les, you're letting me down here, Les.
Well, there were others there that I'm trying to think. Who is a Hall of Famer?
Well, that's the question, Les. You got to answer the damn thing.
Is it somebody whose number was retired by the Blackhawks?
No.
Wow. Defenseman. Who was it?
He had a bar on Madison Avenue.
Chris Chelios.
Thank you. If I gave him a hint, does he get it right?
He had one also in Detroit.
Okay.
It's called Chelly's.
That's not the question here.
It was called Chelly's Chili.
Okay.
What size shirt, Jose?
Yeah, Jose, text back because Les failed miserably on that one.
The fans turned on him. Every time he appears there, he gets booed.
Now you're trying to get out of this one. You failed on that one, Les. Come on. How many? Within 5 penalty minutes, how many did he have?
Chelly?
Yeah. This is a career now as a Blackhawk.
I don't know, probably a couple of grand.
Well, you're still off. 1,495 minutes.
Oh, semi-close.
Okay. I mean, Chris Chelios is what can we say about Chris Chelios? And actually, he's not on our name thing today. Chris Chelios was a great, and I mean great, Hall of Fame defenseman. won cups.
With Detroit and with
Montreal.
And then with the Blackhawks, he didn't win a cup.
No, he didn't, but he was a fan favorite. But, it was a fan favorite.
Until he went to the Red Wings.
That's correct. He was a fan favorite, and then he, went to Detroit, and then every time he came back into town, they booed him. But he was a stand-up guy. And listen, he was almost as good at the end of his career as he was at the prime of his career.
He played with the Wolves at the end of his career.
Yep, he did. So Chris Chelios definitely deserved Hall of Fame. All right. Come on, don't let me down, Les. Don't go 0 for 2 on this one. All right, this is from James Kessel, and the question is, what 7-time All-Star reliever has the most saves in Cubs history?
Well, it's got to either be...
Don't say either. Just it's one person.
It's got to be either Lee Smith or Bruce Sutter.
All right, we'll give it to you because he said Lee Smith first. If you would have said Sutter first, I would have gonged you. So, yes, it is Lee Smith, 180 saves.
And he held the Major League mark there for a while.
Isn't it funny that both the guys that you mentioned not only played for the Cubs, but played for the Cardinals?
Yes, they did.
Isn't that interesting? Lee Smith was almost a bigger than reality person. First of all, he was big stature. Lee Smith was a legit 6'6".
That was one of the worst trades in history, and I will bring you up on this because the day Jim Fry got the job and announced that Lee Smith was being traded away, you called on Sports Phone for him to be fired immediately.
And he should have been.
That was a terrible, terrible trade.
Yeah. Speaking of terrible trades, we had on Daniel Jeremiah yesterday on our Gabriel Schuster podcast. I don't get the top billing on that one either, by the way. There's like a theme going around here. Anyway, and we talked about a trade because we have him for football. He works for the NFL Network, but he's a San Diego person and he's a big Padre fan. So he brought up, and I agreed, it's one of the worst trades of all time, Fernando Tatis Jr. from the White Sox
for Big Game James.
Oh my God. And this is what I always remember.
Who at one time was a hell of a pitcher.
James Shields, he was, but he
not when the Sox got him.
No, he had very, very, and I mean very few good outings. And here's the thing I always remember about that trade. Because right before he was dealt to the Sox, in his final outing with the Padres, he gave up like 10 earned runs in an inning. Okay? And I thought, you don't trade for a guy who does that. Why don't you wait and see another start out of him?
Was that Kenny Williams who made that move?
Was it Kenny or Rick? I'm not sure which. It was the White Sox. I'll just say it was probably Kenny. Anyway, and then he was even worse when he came to the Sox. When he first came to the Sox, he was horrendous bad. That bad. And Tatis has already established himself as one of the best players, period, in
I'm
baseball.
already going to say, and you're going to agree with me, he's a future Hall of Famer even at that age
Well
now.
on his way. He could have been in the middle of that way. I don't know where he and Anderson would have ended up playing. Tim Anderson would have played because they're both shortstops. Who knows? Maybe Anderson would have gone to another position. I don't know. But can you imagine that bat in the middle of the White Sox lineup with everything else that they have?
And for those that are complaining because he kept hitting grand slams and going for they said, oh, you can't, you got a 6-run lead, you can't swing for that. That is a bunch of crap. You don't like it, then get him out. Get him out, and if you're not good enough, then go to hell.
You know what? And next week on our rant, we're going to have just what Les did right now. That'll be, you'll top even Brickhouse. 2 for a nickel, son of a bitch. Shit!
Are you ready? Are you ready?
You enter this final segment of the show at your own risk, because what you might think of someone or someplace may not match your reality. Memories could be shattered or confirmed. This is Names and Places.
Names and Places, Les, our final segment here on the Grobstein Schuster Zone. This is where I give you a name of either an athlete, a broadcaster, or even a building that we've all been in over the years, and we both recite our memories. And I've been waiting to do this because you've been threatening to tell this story, so I want you to tell it now. The name is Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Tell the famous story, Les.
Oh, no, you're going to give me the Greenberg story.
I'm giving you the green light to give the Greenberg story.
And we're talking about a different Greenberg than the one that you hear on the network.
Not Mike Greenberg.
No. Nobody called this Greenberg Greenie. It was probably about 7 degrees above zero here in Chicago. And it was below zero outside. The wind chill factor was even worse. And the Bulls were getting ready to play the Lakers, and they did, and we were all there covering that game. Bob Greenberg and his seeing eye person, he's blind, was blind when he was alive. He shows up right as the game is about to end. And his seeing eye person guides him into gate 3.5, which was on the west end of Chicago Stadium. And they get inside, and he heads down the stairways toward the locker room because the game had just ended. And the Bulls had defeated the Lakers. And as they get in there, then Greenberg says to his seeing eye person, "Who is this?" He goes, "It's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar." And of course, Greenberg was blind, so he didn't realize Kareem was 100% bare-ass naked. He had nothing on, and he was wet, just came out of the shower. And he walks in there, and here is Greenberg. He's got this microphone that still had frost all over it from being outside. It was ice cold. I mean, we're talking about absolutely ice cold. And he says, "Who is that?" He goes, "It's Kareem." And so he says, "Kareem, can you please?" And he took the microphone and jammed it right up his ass.
He sodomized Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
the all-time leading scorer in basketball history.
And they got married next week.
And a good friend of ours, Jerry Cook, whose son Chris Cook is a great writer, covers the Blackhawk games. But Jerry was there and he saw the whole thing, and he was laughing for like the next 10 years.
Now, didn't you tell me, because I wasn't there, I was probably on the other side of the building at that point, but didn't you tell me that Jabbar got up and was ready to hit somebody in the head?
He turned around. He was going to punch somebody, and he realized who it was. He goes, "Ah, shit," and he waved, and he says, and he was out of there, and he was back in the shower before he could blink.
Oh my God, I can't tell a story that tops that one. That's for damn sure. I didn't stick anything up Kareem's, you know what? Oh my God.
And by the way, to the day he died, Bob Greenberg said, "No, never happened, never." I said, "Bob,
you
look,
didn't see it.
It did happen. It did happen. How many people could say they jammed a frozen microphone up the rectal canal of basketball's all-time league?" He goes, "You know what? You're right. Maybe I should just run with that."
Yeah.
But up to that day he died, he continued to deny it happened.
Gosh.
It did happen, and he did take this frozen piece of metal and shove it up his ass.
I can't top that story. I will just simply say,
who can?
Nobody. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. First of all, listen, I'm a big basketball junkie. Everybody knows that, and I used to knew about him, and you weren't able to keep up with high school players like you are nowadays. I mean, that's national news nowadays. Back then, it was not. But he was a national player of high recognition.
Even at Powell Memorial in New York, everybody knew who he was.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, there wasn't social media, and there wasn't the amount of media, but he was such a unique, obviously gifted, tall basketball player that people knew about him. So I followed him from Power Memorial High School in New York all the way to UCLA, where he just dominated out there. And he lost that game early in the season to Elvin Hayes, and then he came back and destroyed Elvin Hayes in the championship.
Kareem had a bad eye when he lost to Houston in the Astrodome.
He did.
And then they played in the LA Sports Arena, which was USC's home building.
Yeah,
but it was played there. That might have as well been a home, and they kicked their ass.
Totally kicked their ass. And then, of course, he went on first. He won a championship in Milwaukee as Lou Alcindor, and then became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He played with Oscar Robertson for the championship in Milwaukee, and then was such a good player, part of the Showtime, even though he wasn't Showtime as much himself, but him and Worthy and Michael Cooper and of course Magic Johnson and so many others, and Pat Riley of course too. I mean, that was just great basketball. So on the Mount Rushmore of basketball players, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar certainly
no question
has a spot on my list.
No question.
All right, the next person, Ozzy Guillen.
One of my favorites. 1985, he was a rookie. He didn't speak a word of English, at least those that you could say on the radio at that time. We're covering the White Sox in Sarasota during spring training. Steve Dahl and Gary Meyer, I'm doing their show with them, and we had a wireless microphone, which was a relatively new technology at that point. And I'm down on the field with the wireless. They're upstairs in the press box at Payne Park. Actually, this was in Fort Lauderdale, which was the Yankees' home facility. And Dahl says to me on the air, he says, "Who can we get on the air?" I go, "The only guy around right now is the rookie Ozzy Guillen." And Dahl says, "Get him." I go, "Well, he speaks no English at all." He says, "Perfect, get him." So I go up to Ozzy. I could speak a little bit of Spanish with him. I held up the microphone. I said, "Ozzy, en el radio en el Ciudad de Chicago. And he grabs the microphone. He goes, sí, senor. Muchas gracias. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. And that was live on WLS.
Listen.
And by the way, you know who finally grabbed him by the shoulder, by the collar, I should say, and grabbed him over to us a couple of minutes later because we were starting to interview Greg Walker. And as they're coming over, he's bringing him over at that point. Basically, Luis Salazar is grabbing Ozzy. He goes, he wants to apologize. Ozzy was as red as the shirt that you're now wearing, which was... it's a Bull shirt, so it's red.
Well, Ozzy is, giving me memories that will last the rest of my lifetime. I mean, Ozzy Guillen was actually, absolutely, I should say, a Pied Piper for all the members of the media.
No question.
I mean, Ozzy would just come out there and everybody would just gravitate towards him. And his pregame sessions that we used to have in the dugout at it was called U.S. Cellular at that point, where he would just go on and on and on. And Ozzy was one of those people, man, you asked him a question, you didn't get any bullshit Bull Durham cliche answers. You got unadulterated, straight stuff.
By that time, he spoke English great.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you understood it.
Back then, he did not.
No, I know that. But, I mean, Ozzy was just fantastic. I loved every single time sitting next to him in those pregame sessions. And then for a half hour, he would go on, and then it would be over. And then the really good stuff would happen. And then he would really, get really blue, of which you couldn't record anymore. Well, maybe we would, but
he would let
play
you
it
know
on the air.
When you talked about the Cubs, he would get even bluer.
I mean, listen, there was so many things that he got on, and he still to this day is very honest with all his thoughts, and he's also been very nice to me and to many other people over all these years.
One of the best.
And he's the manager of the team that, as a kid, I loved more than anything else that won the World Series. So he will always have a special place in my heart, Ozzy Guillen.
Ozzy Guillen and Kenny Williams became the first combination manager and general manager that won a championship in Chicago since the White Sox did it back in 1917 when they beat the Giants.
Absolutely. All right, the next name on the list, Jim Durham.
One of the best. I was teaching a class at Columbia College, and two guys that I had come in as guests, and they were both terrific. First, I had Brad Palmer, who was, of course, the lead sports guy at BBM, and the other was Jim Durham. And they both were outstanding. And JD was as good a play-by-play announcer as there was everywhere, and an even nicer person. He did the games at Illinois State and Illinois Wesleyan for years down there in the Bloomington Normal area. But when he was at ISU, Doug Collins was down there too as a player, and so they got to know each other pretty well then. And what an absolute stunner and a complete shocker, and I mean that in a bad way, when we found out one day that JD had passed away. He was way too young to be gone.
100% on that one. One of the nicest people, I think, in all my years, being in this field of meeting people, whether athletes or broadcasters or journalists or whatever. Jim Durham was right at the top of the list. Jim Durham, first of all, was great doing what he did. Okay, that was doing basketball, and he went back, way back with the Bulls. And I'm so happy that at least he was part of one championship before they parted ways with him in the organization.
Steve Shanwell was the guy that eventually they couldn't come to an agreement on a new deal, and Darcy Vazeas, who was his agent, she and Shanwell could not get together on a deal.
No, it's unfortunate, but again, he won that one championship, or was part of the one championship.
91.
And then he went on, many years as an NBA broadcaster. So he saw the NBA Finals for quite a few years as the NBA broadcaster on ESPN. I go back to our sports phone days, Les, because he was the announcer for the Bulls games, and we always needed the score of the Bulls games when we would go on. And the only criticism I can ever say of Jim Durham, he didn't give the score. He even, he would say Bulls up by 6, Bulls down by 4. He would not say the score, and sometimes you would wait until the very last minute to go into the booth to give the damn update, but you didn't have the score because he wouldn't tell you what the score was. And the other,
Did you ever say anything to him about that?
No, actually I didn't. I had too much respect for him. But the other thing about Jim Durham also that I remember very, very well, he had a lot of, things, that he would say on the air. Everybody's got their own sayisms, if you will. And the one thing that he would always say
rimming, no.
Rimming, yes, or whatever it was. But another thing, when somebody was hot, he would always say, and he's got it stuck on automatic. And so whenever I would play basketball, in the very few periodic times when I would be hot from the outside, I'd say I hit 3 or 4 outside jumpers in a row, I would taunt the other guy and say, I got it stuck on automatic. And I would always, sort of quote him. So yeah, Jim Durham, God bless his soul and God bless his memory. He was one of the absolute best. All right, the last name, and I think I made mention of this early in the podcast. Yeah, we were, when we were talking about playing the Bears, Phillips Stadium.
Oh my gosh. Well, we played the Bears there, our Chicago Radio All-Stars team, of which you were our center fielder. And
I played right field that day for whatever reason. I don't know who. I wish I would have played center field.
Didn't matter. You weren't going to catch any balls because they were all pretty much in the next county. Those balls were hit not only to Skokie, they were hit up to probably to Highland Park, which is your hometown anyway. And we played the Bears there, and they just were they didn't hold any prisoners. They kicked the crap out of us 2 straight games. And we were supposed to use restricted flight balls because we used 12-inch. You and I grew up playing 16-inch balls, as anybody from Chicago did. But everything, you just touched the ball, it was into the Chicago River. But it was still fun. We had lots of, in fact, I think we changed uniforms at halftime because we had home and road uniforms. Remember, we had green road uniforms and white home jerseys.
We were like such a professional team. We had home and road uniforms.
We did, and we switched at halftime of a doubleheader.
We should have had a trainer. Anyway, Phillips Stadium for me as a kid. Okay, we're going way back. I mean, oh my God, it's Phillips Stadium. It's the Little League, haven. And so I had never played in Phillips Stadium until we actually played the Bears. And I think we might have played somebody else one time. I don't remember who.
We played a women's team.
Did we win or lose?
We won.
Oh, thank God.
They were good, though. They were really good.
Okay. Anyway, the Phillips Stadium, if you hit the Phillips truck, what did you get, like $500 or $5,000?
Not us. You had to be in the Little League. You had to be in their Little League. But if we did it, they would say, nice going. See you later. Goodbye.
Even for us, there was a poke, and that little fill-ins truck that was on top of the scoreboard in straightaway center field.
It was like a Brinks truck.
Yeah, but it was really small. It was like the size of a, not 8.5 by 11 piece of paper or something like that. So it was really hard to hit. But I do remember that there was supposedly, a prize, if you will, if anybody ever hit that.
Yeah, if you were in the Little League and you hit it, they did give you a prize.
Think anybody ever hit it?
I think they did, actually.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah.
So did, all of a sudden, in Vegas, or if you won, one of those machines, all of a sudden would all the bells and whistles go off?
If you got 4 of a kind or something like that.
Something like
that. Or
a
straight flush.
Something like that. Anyway, this has been a long podcast, and we got to thank Mike North for that. Pappy's got stories galore and then some.
He hasn't even scratched the surface yet.
He's still talking on the phone. We had to hang up on him finally.
Well, he would be going, but BB, his lovely wife, was just what a sweetheart.
Oh, my God, she's a doll and a half.
She is absolutely awesome lady, and she probably had to lug him away from there.
And it's very true in his instance, and he will be the first to admit it. Behind every successful man, there is a sweetheart of a woman. I don't know how the saying goes, but she is that and then some. So, Mike, you know what? You overkicked your coverage, but God bless you.
Oh, no, and he'd be the first to admit it, too, by the way.
Anyway, this has been fun today. We'll do this again next week. We'll talk to you soon.